Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, which is the right prop for your boat? 3-blade, 4-blade, or 5-blade? In this video, we're going to go and do some in-depth prop testing and find out.
Close your eyes, hear the voice within, calling this heavy.
So let's get into prop testing. So why test different propellers? So 3-blade, 4-blade, or 5-blade, they come in different shapes, different sizes. In general, a 3-blade prop is going to be better for top-end speed, and a 4 or 5-blade prop is going to be better for stern lift and mid-range performance, whole shot, reverse thrust. It's important on wide open throttle. I know we don't operate at wide open throttle a lot, but it's important that the prop be sized correctly to the boat so that you can get into the correct wide open throttle band that the engine manufacturer recommends. Otherwise, you could potentially get carbon buildup, or you can exceed the rev limiter. Neither one of those is good on your engine. All right. And then fuel efficiency, right? So fuel efficiency, we like to think that saves us money at the fuel pump. But actually, as you'll see in this presentation, it also helps on off-grid cruising, going and exploring those places further away from a fuel dock. The cost to repair and replace the prop, that was factored into this. And then our boat's loaded and operated in salt water. We have 12 to 16 foot tide swings a day. Why is that important? I mean, tide's just the height, right? But when you got 12 to 16 feet of water moving in and out, it actually causes a lot of current to go. And the current changes direction as well, whether the tide's coming in or coming out. So weather obviously always affects performance of the boat in general. Not much you can do about that other than choose to stay at the dock type of thing if it gets too bad. But keep this in mind when you're slow boating, right, which is, 8 miles an hour or less roughly. That's whole speed of the boat. Current is going to affect your miles per gallon and your efficiency a lot. 1 or 2 knots of current when you're only doing 7 knots is a pretty big hit. Whereas wind affects the boat more when you're cruising. So if I'm up cruising at 25 knots, and I've got 15 knots of headwind, I'll notice that at the fuel dock. In specific, all this testing was done on a 2021 Ranger Tug R27 outboard. This is our boat. It's powered by a 300 horse, 4.2 liter V6 Yamaha. And who am I? So my name's Martin. That's my co-captain there, Lizina, and then my daughter Melissa in the background. This picture is actually taken. We were crossing Cape Caution on our way to Alaska on this. So what are my qualifications? All right, I'm a boater like you. I don't work for a marine store. I have a boat, and I want to maximize the usage of the boat, and take it to go explore places I've never been. So the props that I've tested. The Yamaha Saltwater Series 2 3-blade, we refer to this as the factory prop. It's the prop that comes with the boat when you buy it. There's a turning Point Mach 3-blade. A buddy of mine, Clifford, went and he put one of these on his R27 outboard. He's got a 22 model. So I've got some stats on that. I've got a couple friends that bought the Sharrow prop, the 3-blade. So I've got stats on that. And then I've gone and done a lot of testing with PowerTech with their offshore 4-blade and their semi-cleaver 5-blade prop. We're going to go over that. To get into prop testing, there's got to be a reason why, right? So this was a lesson learned for me. So last year, we took our boat from Seattle all the way to Glacier Bay, Alaska. It was 2,600 miles round trip, and there's a lot of off-grid cruising, a lot out in the middle of nowhere. Fuel docks are spaced pretty far apart, and there's a lot of cool places to go see that's a little bit even beyond where the fuel docks and stuff are. So there was a couple locations that I really found myself spending a lot of time looking at fuel management to make sure I could get where I wanted to go and not run out of fuel. Right. There was 2 boats that went last year. It was a R27 outboard Lemon Drop, which is a 2019, same make and model as Channel Surfing, just a couple years older. And she had the PowerTech OFS4 blade on her boat as well. So I will tell you, weight makes a difference. And the boat, so on this trip, Lemon Drop burned about 15% less on fuel than Channel Surfing did. And this is the same boat with the same engine with the same prop. So why was she burning, less fuel than us? I had 3 adults, I had tools, I had spare parts. We were loaded really heavy, and Lemon Drop, it's just her on the boat, a lot less weight. So weighting of the boat does make a difference. And this is Lemon Drop at Marjorie Glacier in Glacier Bay. This is the most top northwest corner of Glacier Bay. The waterway actually ends right here. You can't go any further north in this spot. So on our Alaska trip, our longest run, we did at 7 knots, and I had to do 7 knots to conserve fuel, and this always bugged me on the trip. So we wanted to get in to see Tracy Arm, where Sawyer Glacier is, and this run, we left Juneau at 7 knots and did 3 days back-to-back at 7 knots solely to conserve fuel. I get asked a lot from folks on the fuel efficiency, and you just carry jerry cans. When I'm averaging 1.2 to 1.4 miles per gallon with a 4-blade prop, a 10-gallon jerry can is not going to get me very far, right? If I just slow the boat down, then I'm getting 2.2 miles per gallon. That doubles my range. So that's what we did. And you might say, well, what's so special about Tracy Arm? Because the distance-wise, it's about 150 miles from Juneau to Petersburg, and Tracy Arm adds about another 70 miles of an excursion, so 220 total. This was how spectacular Tracy Arm was, right? You're back there, there's not a lot of boat traffic there, you're really off-grid, it's just absolute gorgeous cruising. Sawyer Glacier is all the way at the very end of Tracy Arm, so it's just an awesome place to go. We definitely want to go back to Tracy Arm. And before we continue, I wanted to also mention channelsurfingcreations.com. So about a year and a half ago, a buddy of mine, Mike on Salty Bliss, he's got a Ranger Tug 31. He took that picture in the top right corner. That's us leaving Roach Harbor, and it's funny because we're taking a picture of his boat, he's taking a picture of ours. And Lizina wanted that on the back of a sweatshirt. So she got an embroidery machine, and she did it. And then she's since upgraded to a 10-needle machine that makes it easier and quicker to do. So if you want to support our channel and stuff and get some good swag, some custom swag for your boat, go to channelsurfingcreations.com and check it out. In addition to embroidery, she also does t-shirt prints. The Feeling Naughty is one of her shirts. It doesn't come with a catchfish guarantee, but that's Sarah from Mike and Sarah on Salty Bliss, and they're a fishing machine on that boat, let me tell you. So again, channelsurfingcreations.com. So our longest run on our South Alaska trip was Prince Rupert to Shearwater, and we did that at 25 knots. Now, there's 2 gas stations in between, Hartley Bay and 𝗙𝗦𝗡. You can't count on gas being at those 2 stations. If they have it, great, take it. The only way they get fuel is it comes in by barge. And it's expensive, but regardless of price, you're just glad that they have the fuel, but you can't count on it. And it's not a big deal. The boat can go the distance. I can do 204 miles. I just got to slow down and do 7 knots and take a couple days, and I want to do it in a day, a day's travel time. All right, so this math didn't work at all because I burned 170 gallons of gas, and the boat's got a 147-gallon gas tank. Right, so this was a problem I needed to solve. So here was the objective I set out for propeller testing. So first thing to understand is propeller testing, it's part science and part trial and error, right? The guys that do this all the time, such as PowerTech and all the prop shops, they know based on the weight and the size and the shape and the type of hull, and then you describe what kind of boating you do, they can usually dial you in fairly close, but then there's a trial and error part here. Go try this prop, see if it works. Maybe they change the pitch, maybe they change the diameter. So you really got to get a goal in mind of what it is you're looking to achieve with the prop. And everybody boats differently. 2 people with the same boat can have very drastic experiences with that, with how they use it. So as I said on our Alaska trip, the longest stretch between 2 reliable fuel docks was Shearwater and Prince Rupert. That's 204 miles. I like to keep a reserve in the tank of at least 30 gallons, which pretty much gives me about 120 gallons to operate within. And I'll go into that reserve a little bit, you know, but I really want to stay within the 120 gallons of operating, you know, between fuel docks. So with the offshore 4-blade prop from PowerTech, that prop gets 1.2 miles per gallon on average is what I was getting. So that was 170 gallons of fuel over 8 hours for this leg between Prince Rupert and Shearwater. So I need to get 204 miles of range on about 120 gallons of gas. That's what I set out to do. And in addition, if I solve this, it also helps me with trace yarn because that's 220 miles between fuel docks. If I can get to this fuel efficiency, which puts me at about 1.5 miles per gallon, is what I have to really average, then I'd be able to go back to trace yarn and I wouldn't have to slow boat at 7 knots for 3 days. I could, you know, getting to trace yarn and back I could do, you know, at 25 knots normal cruising speed. So, realizing I needed help, I went and I reached out to PowerTech. So I wrote an email to PowerTech, and you know, some details. I talked about all the stats that I've got, numbers I've got. I've put a lot of hours on the OFS4 prop, which is their prop, you know, and stuff. So I sent them all those details. And next thing I know, I get a call from Marcus, who's the vice president at PowerTech, and then he handed me off to Steve Powers, who's the president of PowerTech, and he's been working with me for the last year, almost a year actually, on this project to see what prop works the best. And they had some pretty good ideas. So they put together a plan based on what I sent them, on what my usage was, what my objective was, how we boat. And they came back and said, we got a couple of props we're going to send you. And it actually all started with me sending them back my offshore 4-blade prop. So I took my prop, boxed it up, and I sent it to them. And then they went and did some magic. To do this, I had to come up with a way to be able to test the prop. Keep in mind, I'm an average boater, just like you who are watching this video, and you know, the spec sheets that prop manufacturers, or actually boat manufacturers, do, I mean, they're like in ideal conditions, and it's important that you test in ideal conditions. So what's an ideal condition? Slack high tide or slack low tide for me being in saltwater, because I really don't want a lot of current moving. I want little to no wind because I don't want to have to fight that. And I need to get the wide open throttle for my specific engine. It needs to be above 5,500 RPM, but less than 6,000. That's the range that wide open throttle has to operate in. Just because I don't hang out at wide open throttle much doesn't mean that I shouldn't be able to hit it. Because in order to burn off the carbon and stuff like that, you've got to run the engine hard. And if the prop doesn't let you do that, then you'll end up with excess carbon buildup in the engine. So anyway, so if you're going to do apples to apples comparison, you got to have as close to ideal set of circumstances as possible. But that's not how we boat. So the second set of testing that I did was real world dock to dock fuel statistics. I have fuel logs on channel surfing, 4.5 years worth of every fill up. How much I paid per gallon of gas, how many gallons I bought, what was in the tank, what was the engine hours, what was the miles traveled, all of that in a spreadsheet for every year, right? And so the real world, and I have that for the 3-blade prop, I have that for the 4-blade prop, and I also have it for the 5-blade prop. And we're going to get into that here shortly. All right, so real world statistics is what meant the most to me, because if I'm going to plan my trip, I'm fighting weather, I'm fighting wind, all right, and it's an extra variable. It may mean that I spend more fuel coming home than getting there, right? So those are the two test methods I came up with. So the way I would do the testing is on channel surfing, I've got the Lenco Auto Glide, which gives me trim tab indicators on my chart plotter. It also gives me the boat pitch angle, right? How far up or down the boat is. And then obviously engine trim. I get speed and knots off the chart plotter. I convert that to miles per hour, and then gallons per hour, obviously. All right, and then these pictures, these are examples. I've got dozens, probably hundreds of these photographs, because when I go out and do the prop testing, what I actually do is I drive the boat and, you know, I get it up on plane, and then I'll slowly start backing off on the throttles, all right, to get to different RPMs and let it settle out, and then I just screenshot, I just take a photograph. And that's how I collect the data, because it's easier to do that when you're out underway. And then when I get home, I go through and I look through all the photographs and I grab the data off the pictures. So it's important that I had really good instrumentation. It's really important that I had good instrumentation set up to look at that. This is the dashboard that I have set up on channel surfing. There's another video I have about how to create this dashboard. This is on a Garmin 8612 chart plotter. For the Yamaha, this is the perfect setup. I have everything I need to see on the boat right here. So I've got trim tabs, and for the purposes of testing, I actually operated them manually, not automatic. And the reason for that is your best fuel efficiency is going to come with no trim tabs, right? So ideally, all the trim tabs should be retracted. The boat's riding right up on the hull. But realistically, you're going to have one tab because the torque of the motor twists the boat. Right, so the starboard tab is the one which is really on the port side. They're backwards, but anyway, the one tab is counteracting the torque of the boat, right? And I'm looking at fuel flow, and then GPS speed, and then RPMs. So, and then the boat angle too, the trim pitch. That's the how far up or down the bow is. So the Yamaha display, another key piece of instrumentation. Thing to note, the economy on the miles per gallon on the Yamaha, it rounds up and down. It's not, so you can't look at that number and know exactly what you're doing and exactly what your miles per gallon is. So in this screenshot, it's showing 1.6, but really if you take 13 miles an hour and divide it by 7.6 gallons per hour, you get 1.71 miles per gallon, not 1.6. So what's going on? I have never seen my Yamaha display show, I've never seen a 1.1. I've not seen a 1.5. It doesn't show 1.7 or a 1.8. It doesn't show a 2.0. Right? There's only certain numbers it'll show. So I mean, I'll see 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.9. It'll show. So when I'm out cruising, what I figured out that the easiest thing to do, this is specific with the 5-blade, with just where its sweet spot. 30 miles an hour, over 20 gallons per hour, 1.5 miles per gallon. So that's what I look for, is speed over flow. And I just know 30 over 20 will give me 1.5. So if I see 32 over 18, I'm doing better than 1.5. If I see 28 miles per hour at 21 gallons per hour, then I'm doing less than 1.5. Pretty easy to figure out. Then I came up with a spreadsheet, so I needed something that would crunch all the numbers for me. So I settled on 16 points of data. So I'm entering in the engine RPM, the miles per hour, and the gallons per hour. I let the spreadsheet calculate the miles per gallon because of the Yamaha not reporting it correctly. And then I also wanted the graph so I could see the curves. Now on this, the blue line is the one we care about the most. That's the miles per gallon on the graph. So in the Yamaha Saltwater Series 2 prop, call this the factory prop, it's pretty much like a 1.6, 1.7, probably a 1.7 mile per gallon prop. So in the mid-range, it doesn't do very well at all. Whole shot on the prop is not great. You need like a long runway to get up on plane. Top end speed is good. The boat will do 40 miles an hour with this 3-blade. It's the fastest prop that I've had on the boat. But here and again, I'm not interested in 40 miles an hour. The mid-range is what I'm most interested in. So reverse thrust, the 3-blade doesn't do well on, which impacts docking a lot. And then the mid-range, it likes to sink into the hull and fall off plane if you're going slow, between 3,000 and 4,000 RPM. So like 11 to 15, 18 miles an hour type of range. The turning point Mach 3, my buddy Cliff went and bought one of these for his R27 and gave me some good numbers, so I wanted to show what it does, because it's a 16-inch diameter, so it's a big blades on the 3-blade. And it does make a difference, as you can see on what it did to the miles per gallon curve. But a fuel efficiency, it wouldn't meet my objective for what I'm trying to achieve on the boat. The fuel efficiency is at 1.6 is too narrow of a band for where I would operate at. So the PowerTech offshore 4-blade prop, this is the one I went to Alaska with. It's pretty much, I call it a 1.4 mile per gallon prop. It'll do 1.65 miles per gallon, but only between 12 and 13 miles per hour. So then PowerTech, I mailed my prop to them, and then they machined it. We'll get into that in a minute. And sent it back to me with this contraption. That's why I call it the modified version. It's been modified by PowerTech. And it made a big difference. And this is the same prop. So this prop is the exact same as this one, other than the modification that PowerTech made to it. This is what it did to the mid-range. All of a sudden, I was at 1.8, 1.9 miles per gallon in the mid-range. This is the only time I've ever seen the Yamaha display show 1.9 miles per gallon on channel surfing. It was right here. And the day I did this testing, I was actually in 2-foot seas. I was taking them on the beam, so it's kind of rolling sideways. But I was like, holy smokes, I couldn't believe how good it was doing in the mid-range. But as soon as I got up, into the upper bands to go above 4,000 RPM, where I'm going, 20 miles an hour or faster, it falls off, and the modification doesn't seem to provide much benefit in the upper band, and it's back to the 1.4 mile per gallon prop that I've known. So to compare the modified prop versus the stock prop, keep in mind, the same prop, all they did was machine it and add that modification to it. This was the change it made, and to the mid-range, which is specifically what I'm looking for. It was huge. 1.83 miles per gallon on average in that mid-range. Anywhere from 12 to 19 miles an hour, it improves substantially the performance of the prop. That mid-range, I can't tell you how important that is. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to be out in 2 and 3 foot seas. You're going to run into those occasionally, and they're not that defying like that. But you got to slow down, and you can't do 2 and 3 foot seas at 30 miles an hour. And then if you slow the boat down and do 7 miles an hour, then the boat rocks and rolls an awful lot, and it takes a long time to get where you're going to get out of it. So getting that performance boost in that mid-range was really key. I was super surprised with how big of a difference this made. The R27 specifically is stern heavy in the back, and that extra blade picks the boat up, but that modification just really improved that mid-range. Looking at the graphs between the modified and the stock 4-blade, this was interesting to me too, because generally speaking, I've always seen miles per gallon curves as they generally decrease. So the faster you go, the worse your miles per gallon gets. That modification kind of flattened that miles per gallon curve out. And we're going to see that when I get into the 5-blade and the Sharrow prop as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the 5-blade that the PowerTech sent me had the modification with it. They made a new 5-blade, machined it, added the modification to it. All right, and then I went and did some testing with that. And here and again, the miles per gallon curve is relatively flat. Right, so this is the numbers that it came up with. So pretty much from 10 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, a little bit less, the boat's gonna run 1.65, 1.7 miles per gallon. I was like, holy smokes, that's awesome. It gives me the full band of speed range to run the boat. And when I start going quick above 30 miles an hour, it drops to about a little over 1.5 miles per gallon. It does lower the top end speed down to 36 miles an hour instead of 40. I'm good giving up 4 miles per hour top end speed for that. The hole shot is amazing with this prop. It just bites that water, and even slow boating. I didn't do a lot of testing up front with slow boating, but where you're going less than hull speed, 7 knots or less. But the 5-blade actually is more fuel efficient than the 4 and the 3-blade at the slower speeds also, which was really cool. So the Sharrow prop, these are numbers I got from a friend. There's actually 2 friends of mine bought Sharrows for their R27 outboard. These are numbers off of an R27 outboard. And look again, that blue miles per gallon curve, it's relatively flat as well, which I thought was kind of cool. So having such a flat miles per gallon curve, what I noticed out driving the boat, go back to the SCE5 here, was There are times I would look down and I'd be getting, 1.2 miles per gallon. I've seen bad miles per gallon with it, right? And whether I speed up or slow down, it doesn't matter. There's nothing I can do. I can adjust the trim tabs. When I see that, where I'm getting such poor fuel efficiency, it's always temporary and it's always conditions. And when the conditions are that way, that affects it no matter how fast or slow I'm going. I could be getting great fuel efficiency at 28 miles an hour, slow down to 17 and get the same fuel efficiency. But now it's a more enjoyable ride in the bad seas. So this is what the Sharrow numbers came up with. Now, I didn't do the testing on this. These were numbers that were given to me, but I wanted to provide them for completeness. A lot of people ask me about the Sharrow. So I would do testing with the Sharrow. I just don't have $5,000 to buy the Sharrow prop because that's what they cost. All the other props that I'm talking about, the SCE5 from PowerTech, the offshore 4-blade from PowerTech, the Yamaha prop, even the Mach 3 turning point, they're all less than $1,000. And repairing those props are easy. Any prop shop can rebalance and repair them. The Sharrow is a very unique design. It's a very big prop on it with those 3 loops. So let's talk about the machining of the prop and the modification that PowerTech did. So this is patent pending, and there's an exhaust tube extension and a diffuser that's meant to be stacked. So the first thing they did was they had to take a standard prop and they had to machine the back of it off so that it would accept the exhaust tube extension and the diffuser. So these pictures are what the props look like machined. Then they created the stackable exhaust barrel. All right, so they sent me 2 props, a 5-blade and the 4-blade pictured here. This 4-blade is the prop that I took to Alaska that they modified. And they set them up so that you could, there's a 1-inch diffuser they put on the 5-blade, and then it was an extension barrel on the 4-blade, and you can mix and match them and stack the diffuser on top of the extension. They're held in with some Allen screws, all right, and I show how the little wrench use the wrench to get them on or off. This is what it looks like fully assembled. Now, it doesn't look pretty because these are prototypes. So the new ones that they're making are anodized, and they should look nicer. But at this point, it was all about performance and testing and just trying a new idea out to see how it works. So, as I said before, this exhaust extension certainly helps a lot in the mid-range. Fantastic stern lift with this. I can stay on plane and operate my boat between 11 and 20 miles per hour and not give up fuel efficiency or anything. And steering is easy too. That's something I think a lot of people overlook is, you get the right prop or the wrong prop on the boat, and steering can be sometimes difficult. Like it's harder to turn the boat. All right, worst case scenario. What happens if it falls off? Funny you should ask, because that happened to me during the testing. So I went out with the 4-blade. I stacked the exhaust tube with the diffuser, and I hit the throttles. And to get up on plane, I heard a clunk, and I watched my fuel efficiency drop from it was above 1.6, and it fell to like 1 point something. And I was like, I bet you the thing fell off. And sure enough, it did. So I came back, and I had the 5-blade. I actually hadn't tested the 5-blade yet at all. But I needed to know, where's the 5-blade fall with the wide open throttle? So I went out and ran the boat just like this without any exhaust extension on it at all to see what would happen. Mid-range, as you can imagine, suffered. It's probably a 15% worse performance without the exhaust extension versus with it on the 5-blade. Steering was actually more challenging. I would say it was stiffer steering in the mid-range without any exhaust barrel on this at all. But wide open throttle numbers came in good. So I went and had to ship the prop back to PowerTech, and they remade me another exhaust tube, sent it back to me. That's partly why it took so long on the prop testing. Just working all this with them, but they've been fantastic to work with. Full disclosure, you're working with PowerTech. No money's changed hands. I sent them my prop. They, so we pay shipping, each way, and I pay shipping to them. They pay shipping back. That's all that we've done on this. Our whole objective on this was, PowerTech wanted to know how well these exhaust extensions work. and I wanted a better prop for my boat, and told them I would do all the testing and stuff for it. So if the thing fell off, you know, they went and reworked how to get it to secure on there better. And when they sent the 5-blade back with the new exhaust extension, I've got over 60 engine hours on it, and it's been rock solid and works great. So what's the winner for me? The winner is the PowerTech semi-cleaver 5-blade, the modified version. So what makes this the winner, right? So it's a 14-inch diameter, 15-pitch, 5-blade with their exhaust extension. So hole shot is amazing. I can pop off plane, bob through an oncoming wake, and then hit the throttles and be back up on plane, back to cruising. You know, reverse. I've reversed into current on the Swinomish channel, 3-4 knots of current. I've backed the boat into that to dock easily. So it helps a lot with docking on the reverse thrust. Mid-range, as I said, I mean 11 to 19, 20 miles an hour, I can operate that full band. It lifts the back end of the boat and keeps the boat on plane. That also goes in with bad seas. If I'm in 2 and 3 foot seas, I can slow the boat down and do 12 or 13 miles an hour. I can do 17 miles an hour and make the ride a lot more comfortable in those waves instead of hitting them. And then the extended range, which is really, you know, one of my main objectives on this for our Alaska trip. Had I had this SCE5 on the boat for the Alaska trip, I would have saved almost $3,000 over the OFS4 that I had. Now, if I had the factory prop on the boat, I would have still saved about $1,000 on that trip. So it certainly beat both of those hands down. And it's pretty surprising on only a 14-inch diameter, too. Most of the other props are all 15-inch diameter. So I want to talk about this. There's a bunch of numbers. I was playing around. I built this as a calculator. If you guys want this, I have it on my Patreon site, is where I published it. So what I was trying to do here is a couple different things. Now that I know how the 5-blade performs, I know what my average cruising numbers are and my average slow boating. Right, so for cruising, 28 miles an hour, 17.5 gallons per hour is a good average to use. So if I'm in Navionics planning my trips, that's the numbers that I use, so that it can estimate how much fuel is going to cost me for the trip. If I'm slow boating, that's 7.5 miles an hour at 2 3/4 gallons per hour. You know, that's the extended range for what the boat can do. But every trip we do, we blend those numbers together. So I thought to myself, well, if I was going to go from Everett to Roach Harbor, and I did it all at cruising speeds, all right, how much fuel would I burn? How long would it take? Well, the answer is just under 3 hours and about 47 gallons of gas. So that's just, you know, cruising 28 miles an hour the whole way there. But what if I changed my habits and I said, you know, I want to save a little bit of gas, so I'm going to do that trip from Everett to Roach, but I'm going to spend 1 hour at slow boat speeds, and we're going to make lunch. What does that really save me on the trip? Well, it turns out that saves me about 2 gallons of gas on the whole trip, all right? But it also cost me an extra hour of time, all right? So what if I then did the same trip, Everett to Roach, but this time I said, I'm going to slow boat the entire way, except I'm going to take 1 hour and pop up on plane and do 28 miles an hour for that 1 hour. What does that do? And it turns out it would take me a little over 7 hours on the trip instead of, you know, call it 3 hours. It goes to 7, and I'd save about 12 gallons of gas to do that. And then obviously, what is the least amount of fuel I can spend to get from Everett to Roach Harbor? And that is to do 7 knots the whole way there, or actually 7.5 miles an hour, and that would save me 19 gallons of gas. But it would take 10 hours. So do you want to spend 3 hours, 7 hours, or 10 hours to do the trip? That was the whole purpose of this exercise, was just trying to get that. And this right here, I really, you know, think it illustrates the power of the outboard with being able to cruise. I mean, I don't need to do 60 miles an hour across the water. I think that's a bit fast for saltwater, especially in our neck of the woods with all the deadheads and stuff out there. But cruising at, you know, 25, 28 miles an hour is comfortable. Cruising, it's not too fast, it's not too slow, and it really buys you the time to spend, you know, to get to places that you may not otherwise have to be. I mean, I still work for a living, So it's nice to be able at the end of the, I get off work, we go jump in the boat, and I can get to my destination before sunset. So here's some testimonials. I want to show some real world statistics. I actually added Sensor Marine to the boat. So that actually helped a little bit on being able to keep track of my how long it took me to get somewhere, and then also what my top speed was for the time for the trip. So the Fluid Motion Rendezvous, that was last September. 104 gallons of gas, 157 miles, so 1.52 miles per gallon average. That's both directions. But if you look, we did 1.48 miles per gallon on the way there and 1.56 miles per gallon on the way back. We had better weather on the return trip than we did getting there. So we did run into some rough seas on this trip, and a little video out the window to kind of illustrate this. So in this case, I was doing 28 miles an hour, and then we were getting beat up. So I slowed the boat down to 17 miles an hour, and it didn't change the fuel efficiency at all, but it did make the ride a lot more comfortable. We did a trip to Port Ludlow with the Everett Yacht Club. Round trip averaged 1.61 miles per gallon. So the way there, we had awful weather getting there, 1.53 miles per gallon, and we had fantastic weather coming home at 1.7 miles per gallon. We spent the weekend at Port Ludlow. So what happened with the awful weather at Port Ludlow? So we were in, I'd say, a solid 2-foot sea state, occasional 3s, all the way across Puget Sound. We started right at 𝗥𝗘𝗘𝗘, and then all the way over down Cross Possession Bar, all the way over to Point Point. It was just ugly. So I slowed the boat down to 12 miles an hour at 7.6 gallons per hour. That's 1.57 miles per gallon I'm getting at 12 miles an hour in 2-foot seas. It stopped the water from falling on the windshield going that slow, and made the ride a lot more comfortable. Although the boat is still light, it still rocks and rolls. It is a boat, right?
It's always hard to judge sea state when you film it. I guarantee you, that's a solid 2-foot. Some 3-footers coming at us right now. Going 11 miles an hour. Trying to keep the boat dry.
On the inside. Water out of the people tank.
That's right.
We did a trip to Kingston. This was with the Fluid Motion Rendezvous in August. Round trip total 1.65 miles per gallon. And then, and this was actually interesting because the trip to Kingston obviously wasn't as great a weather or sea state as the trip coming back. 1.56 miles per gallon getting there, and 1.76 miles per gallon 2 days later coming home. Now keep in mind these are dock to dock, so this includes the no wake zone. That you're in and out of the marinas, all of that. This is my second form of testing because, like I said, I'm a boater, and what I really care about is what's it going to cost me at the fuel dock, right? Because weather is always going to be there for us. So we did a trip to 𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗢, and 𝗥𝗘𝗦�'s roughly 43 miles. And 𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗢 is interesting because there's a 6-mile no wake zone to go through the Swinomish Channel when we go up there. So on our way there, I did wide open throttle most of the way from Everett until I got to the no wake. So I averaged 1.4 miles per gallon on the get to 𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗢. And then 2 days later coming home, I just ran the boat normal, 28 miles an hour. There wasn't a lot of current. I think it was slack tide actually for part of our trip coming back. And I averaged 1.73 miles per gallon on the trip home. Then Poets Cove, BC. This was a long trip. It was 109 gallons of gas for 167 miles. So that was 1.53 miles per gallon averaged. 1.49 on the way there, 1.57 miles per gallon on the way back. So we had better weather coming home than we did going there. But we also did spend some time in rough seas. you know, and I slowed down to at 17 miles an hour at 1.5 miles per gallon. Actually, almost 1.6 miles per gallon. And we also had some lake water, you know, which we don't get very often down here, where I was at 24 miles an hour, 14.1 gallons per hour, which is 1.7 miles per gallon. So on the Alaska trip, I get asked this a lot: how much money did I spend on fuel on our Southeast Alaska trip? Well, the first thing to understand is we actually put 182 hours on the Yamaha in 55 days. So my total fuel bill was just under $12,000. If I'd have had this SCE5 modified prop, I would have saved almost $3,000 on this trip. That would take the 12 grand down to 9. And then on top of that, my average cost of fuel was $5.91 a gallon. So if fuel prices come down 20-30%, I could easily get my fuel expense back to Alaska for our next trip to be $5,000 or $6,000. That's what I'm kind of shooting for. Some snippets from the fuel logs that I have. And here again, if you want the entire fuel logs, I have all of them published on our Patreon site. Just go to Patreon and look for Channel Surfing. You'll find us. And I publish, you know, I've got 4.5 years worth of fuel logs and stuff published there. But this was really good because this is showing the factory 3-blade, which is a Yamaha Saltwater Series 2. It's a 15-inch prop, or 15 3/4 inch, I believe. And I've got 353 engine hours on this prop. And it's a 1.75 miles per gallon average is what I would see with it. But here and again, what I don't get with the factory prop is I don't get mid-range, I don't get reverse thrust, I don't have great hole shot. There's a lot of things that is lacking, but you know, up in your general 4,000, you call it 4,200 to 5,000 RPM range, this is what you can expect from the prop. You know, the gallons per hour average at 7.75 was actually pretty good. It's so the 4-blade, this is the unmodified version. You know, that took up to Alaska. It's a 1.45 mile per gallon average prop. I've got 374 engine hours on this prop, so a lot of good runtime with it as well. And you know, it's 11.5 gallons per hour average, so a little bit more expensive prop to operate. But it has great hole shot, it has great reverse, it has great mid-range. It just, the fuel efficiency is just not there. And then the PowerTech 5-blade, this is the winner. This is the one I'm the most happiest with thus far. I've got 68 engine hours I've ran on this prop. It averages 8 gallons per hour. And I've got it as a 1.9 mile per gallon average because that's what the math came up to. But if you zoom in and look at the numbers, I've got 3 tanks of gas that averaged over, about 2.25 miles per gallon average on those 3 tanks of gas. Those had to be special trips. Like one of them I know is shrimp season. And shrimp season is a lot of slow boating. Because you drop the pots, you drive around for much. You get a lot of hours, and you don't go very fast, you don't go very far. So it's going to boost the miles per gallon on that. But in general, I would say the SCE5, it's a 1.6 to 1.7 mile per gallon prop on average is what you can expect. So, you know, great hole shot, great reverse thrust, great in bad seas. You know, just overall really good prop. And questions. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And the very first question everybody's going to have is, where do you get the SCE5 modified since it's not a normal item? Contact PowerTech. Just call them up and say, hey, I'm looking for the SCE5 modified channel surfing edition. So you say channel surfing edition, they'll understand what you're talking about, and then they can hook you up with that. And other than that, I want to thank everybody for watching.
If you enjoyed watching this video, click the screen to watch another.